Joining her are Carrie Chan, co-founder and CEO of Avance, Hon Moon Yip, partner of Kairos Capital, and Justin Chow, executive director of Growthwell Foods. The stage is yours, Day.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, and good afternoon. Thank you. What a wonderful panel to have today. The global food ecosystem, we move from health to food, is at a stage of unprecedented challenges, and the issues in terms of food and food technology continues to escalate as we speak. And today we cast a spotlight on food, technology, and sustainability, and I'm joined by some of the leading thought makers in the area. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dr. Jay Dason. I'm co-founder of BoomGrow. BoomGrow is a controlled environment farming company that focuses on growing absolutely clean, green, pesticide-free produce through our patent-pending precision farming systems, and in doing so, reimagining the food supply chain. I am joined today by Carrie Chan, Ho Man Yip, and Justin Chow. So let's dig in. I'm sure they have many war wounds and stories about thinking in this area and working and the kind of changes you're making. So maybe we can start with Carrie to introduce yourself as well as the work that you do and the kind of impact that you're bringing.
Thank you so much. Very pleased to meet everyone here. My name is Carrie Chan, founder and CEO of Avon. We are Asia's first cultivated fish company. So what does that mean? We actually use the cell culture technology. We collect some muscle tissues from fish, in our case, develop that into a cell line, and then from there we can make a lot of copies of the cell. Basically, we produce the animal protein, the muscles. That is what we actually eat in the food fish product. So we would use that process to produce fish, so that we do not need to catch, raise, or slaughter fish to actually let our ocean to replenish themselves. So this is what we do.
Excellent. I'm sure there's lots of stories there that we're going to get into later, but let's get to Manip and your stories.
So my name is Hon Man. I spent the last 15 years working with the Temasek Holdings Group in several turnarounds, growing businesses. And by chance, about 6 years ago, I became the CEO of a Singapore-China food zone, and that's my first introduction into agriculture and food. And from then onwards, I start investing in food tech and food tech related. And most recently, I've joined a good team of people in Kairos Capital to invest in food tech and food tech related companies.
Great. And let's move on to Justin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Growthwell Foods. Growthwell Foods' vision is to be Asia's leading plant nutrition company, where our mission is to go out and nourish 1 billion lives with plant nutrition. For us, we were founded in 2019. We currently got backed by Temasek Holdings to really popularize and bring alternative protein or plant protein to the mass in Asia.
Okay, so all in Kuala Lumpur today to share your thoughts. I suppose my first question is in terms of, you do need a kind of mindset, right, to challenge, to create the kind of difference and make that change in food technology, because how we produce food has been something very traditional. We've always grown or planted or produced in a particular way, and to kind of reimagine that does need a certain mindset, and obviously you then will face multiple issues. So I suppose my first question is, how do you think food tech has changed the landscape and in a way create this future of food as we speak, and the key areas that you are particularly addressing? Maybe Carrie, you can start.
Yeah, so the questions about how the food tech is changing the landscape, I have 3 keywords. One is decentralization, The second is the making it more economic. And then the last is the speeding up the process. So I'm using cultivated meat as an example. So think about when we talk about meat, we have in the past have not thought about how we can actually produce a meat without involving animals. So think about animal is a black box, is a machine between the natural resources and the meat on our plate. But we have never challenged that idea because we have been actually using that method to produce meat for so many years. And we realized that it is actually highly inefficient. For example, for the beef, the conversion of the natural material into the meat product, the efficiency rate can be as low as 10%. So what happened to the 90%? We put in a lot of resources. We're talking about the global population without enough food, to go around. And then we're actually wasting a lot of natural resources into the traditional way of making meat. So using cell cultivation or using other similar kind of alternative protein technology, we try to make it basically more efficient. We convert the natural resources to the end product, which is animal protein, directly feeding the nutrients to the cells. So that is economical use of the resources. Decentralization means that actually if we think about how we produce, our meat product, you will think about big pieces of land where we raise cattle, or we have a big like factory, animal farms to raise a chicken and pigs, etc. So basically, this technology is allowing us to detach that in the whole equation using bioprocesses. That may sound, what I've just mentioned maybe sound something not very familiar with some of you, but think about bioprocesses as we use in making beer and yogurt. So beer and yogurt, we're actually using indoor facilities like in a factory, food factory, and then we're using machines to produce our end product. So decentralization means that no longer do we need to attach to a big pieces of land. We talk about rainforest being removed because we need a lot of space to raise the cattle. So these actually help us to decentralize and detach the traditional way of making meat to a new way of making meat. And then last but not least, this process is actually more efficient also in terms of time. For example, when we grow a fish from fry all the way to the sizable animal so that we can send to market, roughly about 12 months, and using bioprocesses, we can actually shorten it down to about 2 months. So I think this is what we needed for the expanding global population and also more shortage of resources going around the world.
Yeah, so that's really turning it in its head, that traditional understanding of how we produce and even how we consume, because that's transforming not just the production but the consumer as well. But that whole, it's quite remarkable in terms of the data, like in terms of the decentralization, what it achieves and the kind of positive impact, resource efficiency that you've achieved in your production. What about you, Justin? Where do you think the key challenges are that you feel that you are definitely tackling head on?
I mean, to be honest, if somebody asks you, have you tried alternative protein or plant-based food? Many people's first reaction is it mock meat? Or is it something made for gluten? Because I grew up as a vegetarian since birth. And when I remember I grew up, many of my friends asked me, where do you get your protein from? Do you eat flour or you eat grass? I said, no. I actually consume a lot of different forms of alternative protein, from mushrooms to soy to many other options available in the market. But what, if you ask me, it's the evolution of how plant-based food is. Because plant-based food mainly in the past came from gluten, but with better extraction technologies that has been improvising and improving over the years, there's better ways to extract protein from yellow peas, from chickpeas, from many sources of novel ingredients that we never used to know about. We used to only have, let's say, our hummus from chickpeas. But do you know that the same chickpea protein isolate could be extracted and used to make yogurt or to make dairy? I think that is one of the most technological advances we have seen with better extrusion and isolation of protein from legumes. And that is where Growth Wealth is putting and investing a lot of our resources and our efforts into better and more novel IPs that can help us extract better plant protein. It's not just about soy, it's not about yellow peas, but potentially the wide available legumes available that we consume on a day-to-day basis, but in a more interesting and novel format. I think that is where we are working a lot on to create more innovation, to overcome that plant-based food is not something that's necessarily deep-fried, necessary from flour, necessary from gluten. I think that's something that we're working on, and that's why in GrowthWell Foods, we're introducing a lot of new innovation. I remember when I stepped into GrowthWell Foods, or when I founded, because I came from a family that my dad has been manufacturing vegan food for 30 years. I told my dad, it's not about making a chicken that tastes like chicken or trying to mimic a pork. I want to create and I want to bring better nutrition, not just for myself, but also for future generations. Because I look at my son, who's 3 years old or 4 years old this year, and I ask myself, will I be creating products that I will feed my own children with, which is not just about tasty, but ultimately more nutritious. And that's why GrowthWell has been sort of like building the whole integrated value chain of alternative protein, right up from isolating chickpea protein isolates to creating better extrusion products that taste better, and ultimately creating the right taste and flavor profile, whether it's in a rendang curry or having the right breadcrumbs on it to taste great. So I think that's where we believe that with better technology and building the full value chain in alternative protein, we can overcome the previous challenges and bring more innovation to the mass. Yeah.
Because that's what it is ultimately, right? Food is nutrition, food is health, and taste. It's that combination.
Taste number one, nutrition number two.
Also, it's fundamental, but yeah, I remember growing up eating a whole load of mock meat as well, then realizing that actually, you know what, it tasted good, but you can't have it all the time, and you need variety. And I suppose then you start thinking, I have a 14-year-old athletic son who's decided that he's vegetarian now and he's going on a vegan journey because he just thinks that it's better for his health and it's going to make him a better athlete. I suppose my question then is the investor in the panel, right? What do you think about in terms of that landscape? And because it's quite a challenging landscape, right? From not just from the technology perspective, but from the consumer awareness and shifting that consumer is Asia. So because they've gone down to their business perspective, I want to ask you for a 50,000 perspective in terms of Asia, where we're very traditionally driven food countries, right? Malaysia, Singapore, and then to reimagine that, it's a huge challenge, number one. And you see these companies making remarkable feats of, in terms of the technology, but that whole changing of mindsets, is that happening? Do you actually see that? And is that going to happen? Is my 14-year-old son the consumer of the future? Is there going to be more of them?
Well, in short, I was hoping that Asian-based, plant-based meat company like GrowthWell, and I've seen them grow and seen them transform. So they are not a startup per se, but they embrace the startup mentality and spirit and said that, this is what the world is changing, the consumer needs. Can we be relevant? Can we be even better than the impossible, the beyond? And I think they have done quite a bit of that. I have recently tasted the calamari, and most recently was grilled octopus or calamari. It was really good, the texture.
Grilled octopus.
Yeah, you couldn't tell. And the most important, the difference between the mock meat in the old days is that there's a lot of just making sure it imitates meat, less of the other nutritious value. But these days, Justin and his group is a lot more educated, so they make sure the nutrition value is in that. And I must say that I've seen and tasted quite a few of them out there, Europe, US, and Asia. They are very good, and not just on the taste part of it, but also the nutrition value. And finally, the other big challenge is cost.
Yes.
And I think a lot of us over here are able to be very innovative since Beyond Meat IPO. I'm beginning to see that happening in Asia.
That's very encouraging.
I want to second one thing on Hong Man. I think Malaysia is a great place to do production of any food-related and, of course, alternative protein, because for us, we have a manufacturing plant in Johor Jaya where we've been producing all the soy-based, mushroom-based. And while you can have all the R&D and the innovation in Singapore, sometimes the unique economics for producing food for the mass might not always be best in Singapore. And that's why in order to bring costs down, I think we're going to eventually scale up more of our production and our manufacturing in Malaysia. And I believe more and more food companies will either choose Indonesia, Malaysia or Thailand to set up more of this innovation in food, and I believe it will be great opportunities for more people who want to enter food tech.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole value map, right? In terms of that manufacturing changes to that whole innovation pipeline is still staggeringly huge there. There's lots of runway there. I suppose I want to take a little bit of step back into sort of the resilience that needs to be built into the food ecosystem, because we currently built for efficiency, fast, quick, and the pandemic cast a spotlight on that. Essentially, we were really put in a situation where there was so much disruption in terms of food. So I suppose, Carrie, my question for you is, where do you think sort of more local focus on growing and our ability to build more localized resilience will address that? And do you think that that's going to create more demand for the kind of products that you are basically essentially building?
Right, yeah, on the topic of resilience, like in the face of climate change, actually what we're developing is a technology, and our technology also produce product, and in the process we also speak with more traditional like a animal protein producer, like aquaculture operators, and also like running fish farms. We see that actually the impact of the climate change, basically no one is immune to that. And, you know, we have read in the newspaper recently the temperature of water of the sea go up, and then a lot of fish dies. And so a lot of this situation is also posing a lot of challenge and risk onto traditional animal agriculture. So, so that is how, you know, alternative protein will need to step into the picture and step up to actually address some of these challenges, be it plant-based, be it precision fermentation, and be it cell-based. So what we can actually, you know, do, as I have briefly explained and, you know, mentioned, decentralization. We do not need to rely on a big piece of land or, you know, like sea-based kind of like operation to produce. And then actually what we develop is a setup whereby it can be implemented even in urbanized area, as long as we have the water and, you know, power in the industrial building. We can do that anywhere. And when it comes to fish and seafood, we do not need to be living really close to the to the sea or near to the river in order to catch and raise the food that we need. So I think that also helping, you know, reducing the carbon footprint when we talk about some of these food products. Fish is one of the most globally traded kind of food product, and what we eat here, you know, if there are some species not actually native to this region, we basically need to ship them over using a very long cold chain, which is definitely a very big carbon footprint. In the future, we see that we can regionally addressing it with the local market using this technology.
Yeah, that's the whole sort of approach, right? The more local we go, the more resilient we come, and we then build that whole food security for countries and for local communities. And then within that, do you think, Honman, that we can, do you see that innovation happening out of that? In a way, it's like a crisis, right? We have a climate crisis, and we are sort of, the pandemic put spotlight on food technology so much. In Malaysia, for example, we had traditional farmers who could not get supply out to the market. They had to dump produce and things like that. So do you think those lessons will become sort of the burning questions of the moment? Or sometimes, however, you take a step back and think, is plant-based or the whole cell-based move, food tech, is it just sort of a, you know, popular child of the moment? Is that what it is? I'm trying to again ask a more provocative question.
So in a long-term point of view, food tech is still very relevant. Food tech brings us plant-based, cell-based, very soon cell-based, and we're beginning to see a lot of governments putting self-sufficiency and food security as part of their priority. I think the challenge we have is, like any industry that's morphing, there will be milestone challenge, like can we get the taste as close as possible to the meat that we are trying to address, as well as the cost. And with those, I think the industry has moved quite a bit. I mean, I just spent 3 weeks in UK and US talking to founders, attending tasting sessions. I see a new category emerging. It's something what we call in the industry hybrid. hybrid combines the best of plant-based meat with cell-based fat to address cell-based fat to address the taste issue and also to address the cost issue. Eventually, cell-based meat will arrive. When, I don't know, probably decades, but there will be lots of ups and downs. To fast forward this and said that recently we have this issue about not having enough fresh chickens from Malaysia to Singapore, right?
Yes.
Technically,
the chicken crisis.
Yeah, technically food tech can solve this, let's say, decades later, because we literally can produce chicken fillet, minced chicken in weeks. I'll be talking about maybe 20 weeks, 30 weeks in a bioreactor that Carrie is fine-tuning. And then you mix with plant-based meat, you couldn't tell the difference. How often do you eat most of us are eating, most of the food consumed is actually nuggets, burgers, and things like that. You don't need food. But what I'm trying to say is that even if one day both Singapore and Malaysia got locked down for whatever purposes, we are able to actually produce our own protein. That's the most important part. I think a lot of governments are waking up that in the past decades, we also rely on efficiency, like, oh, it's cheaper to import. And then see what happens if something like this happens.
Yeah. So that's affirming that definitely we are innovating out of a crisis. It's still many sort of miles ahead. There are lots of milestones to hit. But do you think that there's been lots of investor interest in the industry, right? It's super hot an industry, like lots of focus. And the industry itself is quite wide-ranging, cell-based, plant-based. There's all this AI technology, aeroponic, hydroponic. So it's like farm to fork. There's so much changes happening. But do you think sort of it's, again, I'm coming back to that immediacy of now, Justin, like the geopolitical impacts, all this kind of, do you think investors are now like sort of waning a bit with the industry, or will that affect investments in the industry? I'll come to you shortly on that, Honman, because I want your perspective, but we'll start with
in my own perspective, I think agri and food tech startups or investments for the long run in Asia, I think will still be one of the most exciting space to be in. Whether you're helping farmers or you're creating novel food, you're doing cell-based precision fermentation, I think more and more investors are clearly looking into this space for a couple of reasons. I think maybe 10 years ago, when people talk about climate change, people are like, meh, like, are you sure? But you can really now see the devastation of climate change happening across the region. You could have, the last 2 months in China, there was a huge drought. I was very worried if we were going to have vegetables, because a lot of our fresh produce come from China. A lot of our food materials come from China. And not just of climate change. I think global disruption in supply chain is driving up everything, driving prices up. And farmers are having their animal feed or having their fertilizers being a lot more expensive, and that drives animal protein. Of course, I think that's a little bit good for me if I'm in the plant protein space, because I start to achieve price parity, but that shows that there's a lot of challenges facing food that a lot of us take for granted at today, which I believe will be the opportunity in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's why I feel like there's still a lot of interest in the space. However, I would like to say, just because it is food, it also means that people might think that barriers of entry might be lower, or it might be easier to replicate that plant-based nugget. But the true innovators or the true leaders in this space will be able to differentiate not just with a brand, ultimately is to really look into the full value chain and core IP of a product, and ultimately the best nutrition you can bring to consumer. I feel that people who can take the right box on nutrition, on taste, and ultimately bring costs down so that more and more consumers would be willing to afford and pay for it, I think that it will be the holy grail, and I believe that it will be one of the next decade will be the most exciting for agri and food tech players or startup or entrepreneurs in this area. Yeah.
It is definitely so exciting, but we still have not addressed the issue of cost, right, Honman? You go to a supermarket and like a Beyond Meat burger, it's still beyond. It's really very expensive. I would rather just buy chicken, but I have a vegetarian son who insists, and who now when he wants to go vegan wants to get oat milk. So all these things are super, super expensive. You need to be sort of middle class to afford a vegetarian vegan lifestyle, although you want to focus on food and nutrition. So as an investor, where do you see that? Will we achieve price parity?
Hurry up. Hurry up, enter Malaysia. You know, you got one customer there.
Yes, definitely.
No, I was just gonna say that the economic downturn affects everybody.
Yeah.
Food tech industry is no exception. But surprisingly and unexpected to many of us over here, it's actually more positive to us than anybody else. Last month, there was a report that mentioned oat milk in Germany costs less than whole milk. Plant-based meat in Netherlands costs less than farm meat. And in the US, plant-based egg reaches price parity as farm egg. Second thing is governments around the world, and we have been contacted, are all very keen on finding solutions for food security, food self-sufficiency. And then the third one, can't remember what's the third one already. Valuations of companies has gone down tremendously, and founders are a lot more realistic in terms of working with us. So lower price, government coming in to support, and better valuation helps people like us in Kairos Capital to go out and really accelerate and make things happen.
So there is, we will get there, hopefully, in Asia as well. I think, Justin and Carrie need to get faster. But what about, okay, so you do see investors being quite positive with the downturn or whatever. There will be, as long as you achieve, I think, taste, the nutritional aspect, then your customer base will be there. But that still doesn't address the capex aspect, right? You do need huge initial investments. I think, Carrie, you bear some war wounds in terms of how do you feel now? If you know now what you knew then, would you do this again? Would you still continue on this journey to do what you do? Because the huge initial, not just the huge initial cost, then the multiple challenges as you go along.
Yes, definitely. You bring up a very good point. The capex, in general for food, I think not just cultivated meat, but also other brick and mortar kind of like food related to production. We need to invest quite a bit of money into building out the facilities before we even have the inventory and the product. And then the lead time is also kind of extended because of the supply chain, the logistic chain actually extended. For example, bioreactor. Previously, it may just take, 7-8 months. Now can easily be 10 months, if not 12 months, to actually get the equipment in place. So I think that is the challenge. But if you ask me whether I will do it again, obviously, I definitely will do. We're actually planning and actually designing, going to implement our pilot production line in Singapore to demonstrate our technology and the first scale up. So I think once that is in place, and then subsequently, there could be a lot of other more creative way to take it more capex and also asset-light approach. In our model, we're looking at working with partners and using technology licensing approach with different parties around different parts of the world. I think there could be subsequently there will be some innovation and creative business model one way or the other to address that heavy capex consideration.
Oh, Carrie, I will, on days when it's very frustrating, I'll call you because, because you do feel when you work in food tech like you're building multiple little building blocks, and you're basically on a daily basis breaking boundaries and borders and to reimagine this world.
Jay, if I may, so I came from two industry that has changed the way we live. Cell phone.
Oh, yes.
PC. So I used to work for this gentleman called Bill Gates. One PC in every home. I remember that. And now, how many PCs and smart devices do you have? And this mobile phone we all carry. When I first sold my Motorola $3,000 phone, it does one thing: make a call. A lot of things need to happen, and that takes like 30 years or so. And if you look at the cell phone industry, and I happen to work for almost every one of them, Nokia, Motorola, BlackBerry, Siemens, Ericsson's, and so on, and you hardly remember where they are today. But there are a few players that are still around. Qualcomm, who provides the chip, Foxconn, who makes the mobile phones, and then you have Apple. Even Apple themselves don't make their own phones. So you look at Carrie, by the way, I'm an investor in Avant Meat, so I'm going to take that off her and say that you don't have to build your own large-scale manufacturing plant, because to raise 100 million or even 200 million today is not easy, and you want to put everything into that doesn't make sense. The industry took notice, which is why at Kairos, we are looking at the whole ecosystem. We look ahead of the curve, while the rest of them will be jumping into innovators. We look at where are the bottlenecks, and we apply investment and solution in these bottleneck areas.
Yeah. Maybe just one thing to add on that.
Yes.
GrowthWealth is now a portfolio under Temasek's Asia Sustainability Food Platform called ASF. So if there's any food tech entrepreneurs here that you all want to figure out to start up something in food tech, I think Temasek has a great platform with ASF where they have extrusions, they have precision fermentation facilities set up where it can help you go from pilot to scale up. So I think it's not an instance where I need to have 10 million, 15 million, 20 million to build a factory to start to produce my first nugget. But I think there's definitely platforms available and people who can partner. And of course, anybody here would love to partner GrowthWealth in the plant-based space. We don't see anybody as competitors. We love to partner with people who have the same mission of trying to bring healthier and more sustainable food to more people. And that's why I believe that's the most important. Collaboration and partnership within the food tech ecosystem will help the whole industry blossom. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah, that's very inspiring to hear. I think we have a few more minutes, so let's open up to the floor if we have any questions, and that will be interesting to hear. Yes?
Yeah, hi. Oh, a bit close. I think anyone that's following the space can see there's a lot of Asian companies that are very, very exciting, but we've lost at least 3 of them to other regions, whether they've gone to America or one of them moved to Amsterdam. What do we need to do that these companies don't just keep their topco here, but they actually keep their operations here and are considered a true Southeast Asian success story?
That's a great question.
Maybe I can take that. 2 perspectives. I think when we talk about plant-based alternative protein, especially in the meat and seafood space, the market clearly is in Europe and in US because consumers are more educated, consumers are more aware about sustainability and about lifestyle choices. And that's why some of the plant-based food tech companies have decided to relocate their commercial and their operations to where the market is. However, I would like to say that Asia Pacific will be the fastest growing region for alternative protein. So a company like GrowthWealth, we are born in Singapore, we founded in Singapore, we see Asia as our core market. However, we also have to tweak our strategy a little bit. Plant-based meat and seafood market in Southeast Asia or in Asia Pacific is about $200 to $300 million addressable market, probably growing to maybe 1.6 billion in the next 5 to 10 years. So if you are just trying to develop something in this space, you will discover that the market is still relatively small because consumers are slowly getting aware. However, on the other side, if you're in the alternative dairy category, Asia Pacific is already an $18 billion market and the largest market in the world for dairy alternative because we drank soy milk, now we love oat milk, and we are more open to anything that, because we are lactose intolerant, so we are more open to plant-based dairy products. So I would encourage anybody, if you want to be in Asia, you love Asia, you want to help and nourish consumers in Asia, then maybe instead of developing a Beyond Meat burger patty because it was successful in US, maybe we could look into developing maybe more coconut milk that Southeast Asia love, but it's more nutritious or it's healthy. Or maybe developing chickpea yogurt. Sorry, that's what I'm doing. Don't do. Maybe you all can develop, I think Malaysia has a new brand called Snap Pea. I think yellow peas, if you can create a very tasty product that is in the dairy alternative space, I would say that this is one of the most exciting track that you can develop. So it's not about flying and setting up operations in the West, but figuring out what consumers in Asia love and then creating the right flavors, the right products for them. So I think that's how we can grow in Asia.
And my 14-year-old young man, they are going to grow into the consumer of the future in Asia, right? Yes. And any other questions from the floor? I suppose no questions. So maybe the investor in the panel, what are your thoughts in terms of moving? Do you see that because we've achieved the taste in a way, we are on that journey towards achieving taste, right? But I suppose my question is more in terms of do we forum shop? Is it Malaysia that we should focus, or Thailand? I know you mentioned earlier that there are companies that are looking at a Pan-Asia Pacific approach. So what's the best approach for a country like Malaysia in terms of building sort of a food tech space?
Well, there are two parts of the question.
Yeah.
If you're confused and so on, then go with the expert. This is going to be a long journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
Second thing is for Malaysia. I want to second what Justin said earlier, was that you don't have to copy what the US, Netherlands, or Singapore is doing. Malaysia is a key player in a particular stage for this growth, and the industry has reached this stage where the startups are beginning to scale, especially the successful one. Malaysia plays a very, very good role in terms of being a high-quality, low-cost base for the region.
Okay, and we're running out of time, so last 30 seconds, sort of your wish list, Carrie, for the food system and your business and your wishes.
Wishes is, I think, hopefully for us in a perspective, the legislation for new kind of like alternative proteins is actually one of important kind of element that we can actually, beyond commercialization, can reach out to more people. So I hope that, including Malaysia and also other countries in Southeast Asia, can also have some kind of like a new regulation that allow new tech food to be in the market a lot more like a earlier and easier.
Regulatory changes. Hanman?
Well, I would say come join us on our journey, whether you are studying, a recent grad, or have a full career, because to change the world, to fix the broken system, the broken food system, we need all of you to come in and raise the awareness, and together, well, we make that transformation.
And Justin?
I hope for 100 flowers to blossom in this industry, because our competition is not with each other, but it's with the unsustainable food system or animal protein, and we hope that more players can join in this journey and really create better products for consumers. Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That was eye-opening. In fact, I'm vegetarian myself, and I consume a lot of plant-based products. So I'm actually blown away with the innovation that Justin and all of you on board shared. But honestly, we have come a long way in food innovation. And actually, as what they've said, it is a great landscape to venture into and invest in. The experts have given us so much to take away, so many ideas that you guys can actually venture into in the food industry. Now, without further ado,